relates to my experience in motherhood, but you can just as easily relate it to fatherhood. And for those of you who don't have children, welcome to our worlds. So, okay, just give me 1 second. I just gotta get ready. Can you really be the woman you want your daughter to become? Before I became a mom, I had it all figured out. And you know those friends of yours who don't have kids, but they know exactly how to parent your children and how you should parent your children? That was me. And I had some judgments about people that I worked hard to keep to myself, but I had very strong opinions about what I wanted for my own children as they grew before I ever even got pregnant with them. And so I knew that I wanted to parent mindfully. I knew that I wanted them to be able to fully express their feelings without being squashed. I knew I wanted them to fully express their creativity also without being squashed. And I also knew that I was never, ever, ever, ever going to yell at them ever. And most importantly to me was that I really wanted to breastfeed. I felt like that was a natural, beautiful gift that I could give to my children as they started their journey in their lives. And so the day that my firstborn daughter was born, I have 3 kids, was one of the happiest days of my life. I felt this wave of love just come rushing over me. It's that soul love that you can't really explain to anybody. It's something that you have to experience for yourself. And I just felt so honored and so happy to finally be a mom. Yet several days later, I found myself in my bedroom. I wasn't alone, but I felt alone. And I was holding my beautiful baby girl in my arms, and I was crying hysterically as she cried hysterically. And I just thought, what? It wasn't supposed to be this way. And nobody told me about that part of motherhood. Nobody mentioned it. So I did everything I could to soothe her. I rocked her, I bounced her, I took her outside, I breastfed her, I changed her diaper, and nothing was working. And after several hours of this, I got really scared. And I called my midwife, who came right over to examine my baby, and she found that my baby had lost quite a bit of weight. And my baby was starving. And I have the tissue, they're in my purse. But my baby was hungry, and so in that moment in time, I felt like, oh my gosh, this is my first week of motherhood, and I can't, what happened? Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? Can I just talk like this? Is this gonna work for y'all? Yes. Great. My first week of motherhood, I felt like I couldn't even provide the basic nourishment to help my baby sustain life. And I felt devastated, I felt powerless, and I felt like a failure as a mom at that moment. And what happened was it led me down this rabbit hole of anxiety and feeling like a failure. And if you take an anxious, worried mom and you put her on maternity leave by herself with her baby, she has a lot of time to start worrying about her child's future. And so that's what I did. I started to worry that my daughter was going to have an eating disorder by the time she was in high school, and she was going to hate her body. I worried that my daughter was going to have such low self-esteem that she was going to look to men and boys to show her what her self-worth was. I felt worried that my daughter was going to go out for a night in college and put herself in unsafe situations with men to feel love, connection, and to feel beautiful, if only for a moment. Essentially, I was terrified that my daughter was going to become me. And so as my daughter grew, she became anxious. And I knew that not because I was anxious, because I had no idea I was anxious, which is kind of ironic. But especially because the reason I knew she was anxious is because I was a trained psychotherapist. And so I worked with children, and I saw the signs, I knew the signs of anxiety. But the other thing that I noticed was that I was not being the mother that I was going to be before I had children. I was being the opposite of that person. And I knew that my daughter deserved so much more from me. And so I decided to reach out for help, and I hired a parenting coach because of her behaviors and because I was damaging her. And the parenting coach looked at me one day after we worked together for a while, and she said, "Dawn, nobody wants an anxious mom." Really? And so I started thinking about it, and really nobody wants an anxious mom because anxious moms are overwhelmed. They are in crisis a lot. They don't trust their own judgments. They don't trust their decisions. I was laughing when you were telling me because I was thinking about this. They do this thing where their children are trying to fully express themselves and explore their boundaries in their bodies, and the anxious mom is saying, "No, don't do that. I want to keep you safe." And they take their high expectations and they place them on everybody in their family who's never going to live up to them because they're not their expectations, they're the mom's expectations. So basically, the other thing that she taught me was that my daughter's behaviors were simply a reflection of what was happening for me on the inside. And so essentially I was gifting my daughter my anxiety. It was not hers to carry. So that was the wake-up call that I needed to begin to heal and release all of the emotional issues and the things I had been carrying throughout my life. And I felt like it was time for me to take a stand for my daughter. But in order to do that, I knew that I had to have the courage to take a stand for myself, which was really hard for me. So with a whole lot of help and a whole lot of willingness to transform and change, eventually I started to feel more confident and I started to feel inner peace. And I never in a million years thought that I would ever experience inner peace in my entire life. But what I noticed is that my daughter was still staying kind of about the same because nobody was helping her. And so what I started doing with her is first I just was present with her and I would allow her to express her feelings and let her know that all feelings are welcomed in our home. And then I decided to try something. And what I decided to try was to teach her the same body centering techniques that I learned as a professional and that I used to help heal myself and that I use today to help me stay energetically clear and grounded and feeling confident in my body. And the same techniques and practices that I've also taught to other women that have helped them as well, but I didn't know if it was going to work for her, but it did. And I was so excited because she started feeling calm as well, but she also became courageous. And her courage showed through when she had the courage to get up in front of 100 people and sing. And if you had known her before that, you would have been shocked. It was amazing. And what I noticed too is the more I stepped into my power, the more that my daughter stepped into hers, the happier she became, the more confident she became, the more connected to herself and to me she became. And part of the reason she became more connected to me is because I was happy. I wasn't freaking out all the time. And so, she wanted to be around me. And I realized then that I was onto something big. And that's when I thought to myself, okay, if I can pass my anxiety down to my children, then I can pass self-confidence and self-empowerment and self-love and self-compassion. And I could pass down spiritual connection. And the list goes on and on and on. And that was a life-changing moment and epiphany for me. Because it also helped me realize that when I carry shame in my life, my daughter carries my shame. And when I carry fear in my life, my daughter carries fear. And when I live in anger and resentment toward my husband, because that's how I was feeling at the time, postpartum, then she lives in anger as well, but she also lives in fear because angry people are scary to be around, especially for children. But on the other hand, what I also realized is that when I stand in my power and I live authentically and I speak my truth, my daughter knows that she is enough and that she can do the same. And when I put myself first in my life without guilt and without feeling ashamed and without worrying about being judged by other people, my daughter knows that she can be number one in her life too. And when I allow my light to shine into the world, my daughter also has permission to do the same. So, with all of that said, I am not perfect, and I am not a special case here at all.
And if I can move from being a terrified woman who was scared to death her daughter was even going to resemble her, to being proud of who I am today, then you can as well. And so the question, can you really be the woman you want your daughter to become? The answer is yes, because just like me, you have the power to change your life from the inside out. And you have the power to shift generational patterns that you don't want to pass down. And you have the power to transform in such a deep way that you have a ripple effect on your children and your partners and your community and the world. And so today, I ask you to take a stand for yourself and to take a stand for your daughters and to have the courage to heal on an emotional, spiritual, and physical level, and to have the courage to dive deep into those things that have been keeping you stuck in your own life, and those stories that you no longer want to hang on to, because that will help clear this path for our grandchildren and their grandchildren to walk without our struggles, to walk without our pain and our mother's pain and our grandmother's pain and our great-grandmother's pain. And the other thing I'm asking is for you to have the courage to just shine your light in the world, to step up and take a stand for yourself, shine your light in the world, because your daughter deserves to have a mom who's fully confident, who's calm, who loves herself unconditionally. More of our girls need that. But really, you deserve to be that mom that you want your daughter to become as well.